Hello, friends. I'm Kush Khandelwal, and this is Ageless Athlete. A few years ago, I started asking questions that would not leave me alone. Why do some people keep pushing mentally, physically, spiritually long after others burn out or break down? What does it really mean to age well when you still crave movement, meaning, and mastery? This show is my search for answers. Each week, I talk to elite athletes, everyday adventurers, and pioneering researchers who are stretching the limits of what's possible across age, injury, illness, and self doubt. You will hear hard won lessons, untold stories, and science backed strategies for building a body and mindset that lasts. For those of us joining for the first time, welcome to the show. For the rest, thank you for joining us again. Time is our most valuable asset, and I deeply appreciate you giving me your time today.
Imagine waking up in a sandstone valley surrounded by spires that glow red at sunrise. The air is cold, but your body remembers movement, the pull of rock, the rhythm of breath. You were once a young woman from the conservative South, expected to marry, settle, and play it safe. Instead, you chose the mountains, the harsh, wild kind. You lived out of a Subaru for 7 years. Yes, 7 years you lived out of a Subaru. You ate on $14 a week, two pairs of pants, and learned what simplicity really means. Kitty Calhoun was the first North American woman to climb Dhaulagiri and the first woman to ascend Makalu's West Pillar, one of the most formidable alpine routes. She has endured weeks pinned down by storms, survived avalanches, and watched glaciers vanish beneath her feet. This conversation is more than just about conquest of mountains and big walls. It is about curiosity, about a woman who still climbs decades later, not to prove anything, but to stay awake to the world. In this episode, Kitty shares what it means to live simply in pursuit of something hard. She opens up about growing up in the South and breaking gender barriers. She talks about leadership, how to guide without commanding, and she reflects on her work with indigenous communities, learning to listen and finding purpose beyond summits. If you have ever wondered how to stay hungry for life while staying grounded in gratitude, or how to redefine achievement after 40, 50, 60, this one will stay with you. Because for Kitty Calhoun, being ageless isn't about denying time, it's about meeting it with humility, courage, and open heart. Kitty, I always start off with this question, which is where are you right now? And what did you have for breakfast today?
Well, I'm in Castle Valley, which is 17 miles outside of Moab. And this morning I got up early to go get a mini traction session. So I ate a builder's bar in the car on the drive up to the common area.
Okay. sounds efficient. Yes, all these years later, you haven't forgotten your minimalist roots.
Yeah.
And I mean, like sometimes, one has to prioritize the right things, especially when you have to get that climbing session in before we do this podcast recording.
Right.
And Moab is indeed a special part of the country. I was not as familiar with Castle Valley in particular. So what makes this place special, Kitty? And I know this is far from where you grew up. So why do you choose to spend time there?
Well, yeah, Castle Valley is special because we're surrounded by towers on one side, Castleton Tower, the rectory. On the other side, there's the rim, Porcupine Rim, and then at the head of the valley, there's Round Mountain. It just the desert landscape has grown on me. Like, I never appreciated the desert before, having grown up and spent all my time in the mountains. And in fact, I remember conversations about, well, why don't we could just bury nuclear waste in the desert, nothing grows there. And then I realized how wrong that is one time when I was invited on the kayaking trip down the Grand Canyon. And I was a big kayaker at the time, never been down the Grand. And it was in the spring before the peak season. So we got to spend 21 days on the river. So we had some rest days where we could just spend the whole day hiking. And one day we hiked up towards the rim, and overnight wildflowers had just started blooming, and the whole desert was just covered with wildflowers. And I realized that this is really a living environment. It's not a wasteland. And so yeah, just the different ecosystem and the indigenous culture and the wildlife. It's all fascinating to me now.
Indeed, the desert is complex. It's got so many layers and different environments and different seasons. And I think it's one of those things that one needs to find out after spending some time there, because yes, first impressions, you see this like two-dimensional view, right, and then you spend time there. And I feel like, the people who propose those kinds of, let's say, desecrations, mining and storing hazardous waste, I mean, they need to come and spend a day with you, a couple of days, and have you have you bedazzle them, because I can see you lighting up when you talk about
right. It reminds me of one time a guy was writing an article for Cowboys and Indians magazine, and he wanted to write a story about me as a woman ice climber, kind of rare, or it used to be rare. And I thought, well, I don't want a story written about me. I want a story about something I care about, or I don't know. And so I thought, and it was spring, the ice was gone. So I said, let's go to Bears Ears. And I'd never actually been to Bears Ears before. And, Indian Creek is part of Bears Ears. So I took him climbing at Indian Creek on the way down to Bears Ears. And then we got there, and there were a couple hikes that friends had recommended, and we're out on this first hike, and I remember just hiking up, and then near the very end, you end up on this slick rock, and then you have to do this down climbing, and then all of a sudden there's just this like big dome that you have to go down and then back up, and then there's dwellings. There's a dwelling on top of the dome, and it was just like, and to get there you have to do exposed traversing, and it was just I remember, but it was breathtaking, really. I mean, I sort of gasped for breath when I saw it for the first time. It was totally unexpected, and he wrote about that, like this woman who's climbed in the Himalayas, her breath was taken away in Bears Ears, right here in our own backyard. And so, yeah, there's a lot of magic here in our own backyards, is what I'm finding.
That's right. He likely came prepared and somewhat awed by your climbing accomplishments in some of the world's most far away and exotic and intimidating places, and he didn't. He likely expected you to be somewhat blasé
Yeah,
about just our little humble deserts of the
right.
southwest, but they are not so humble. They
No,
are
no,
absolutely gorgeous,
yeah,
and yeah, that's a great little story, and maybe illustrates, let's say, in a way, your hard-on position as an advocate,
yeah.
not just for our sport, but for our public lands.
Mm-hmm.
Kitty, I'm so glad to have you here. And a lot of listeners may not know the full arc of your story. So before we get into specifics, how do you describe yourself these days?
Mm. Well, I'm a complicated lady. Hard to put in a box. I'm trying to stay that way too. Yeah, boy. I'm a mom, a wife, athlete. I'm a Christian. I'm an advocate for just transition to clean energy and conservation of public lands.
Friends, it means a lot that you're here. I pour a ton of heart into the show. The research, the interviews, the editing, it's all me, trying to share stories that matter. If Ageless Athlete has ever made you feel seen, inspired you, or just kept you company on a long drive, or better, over a run or a bike ride, I would be so grateful if you considered supporting it. Even a small amount helps keep it going, helps keep bringing the show to you for free. You can chip in at buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. Again, buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. You can find the link on the show notes as well. Thank you for listening and for being part of this. That is certainly a little list there.
Yeah.
And at different times of the day or season, maybe one hat is bigger than the other. But you made your name, or you came up the ranks through climbing and through some of the things that you were able to complete in the mountains. So your career started many decades ago as a climber, right? And you have stood on some of the tallest mountains of the world, like we were just talking about. But decades later, you're still climbing. Like just this morning, you went on a little strike mission to do some climbing. So, what does climbing mean to you today, Kitty, compared to what it meant to you a few decades ago?
Well, when I first got into alpinism, that was all I did every day in the winter. I just wanted to climb in the Rocky Mountains in the winter because summer was too easy. I learned more in the winter. It was more challenging and prepared me better for big mountains. And all I did every day was climb. And then I worked in the off season, which was not winter. And then I started going on an expedition in spring or fall. I had a bucket list, sort of. They were all big adventures. And that's changed for me now because I'm in a place where a lot of things have happened, including climate change. So that's affected some routes that I was once interested in. And then politics. Some areas aren't as safe as I feel comfortable going into. And then there's my husband's Not as interested right now in going into big mountains, and the cold, snowy, icy is what I mean by big mountains. And I have a lot of interests that I'm trying to balance. So I scaled it back, and then an adventure became for me a big wall on El Cap every spring, and I did that for a number of years. You know, you can get in a big adventure in 2 weeks or less in El Cap, right? So more recently, I've just been focusing on movement, and actually I'm grateful that I'm still in really good health and my fitness level's really high. So I'm trying to just take advantage of that, maintain that, and continue to push my levels technically as hard as I can, climbing, and then I'm supplementing that with running and weightlifting and a little stretching or yoga. Yeah.
Well, for sure, Kitty, and your energy and your zest for going out there and doing stuff, like, it comes across loudly and clearly. And it's funny how you mentioned that, your partner is less inclined to go out to the big mountains. So maybe if you did not have quote unquote that bit of an obstacle, you probably would still be out there.
It's possible, but there's also, sometimes I think that you only have 9 lives or whatever. I don't know what it is, but
True.
I think that there's only so much in you. You can only mentally and physically endure so many epics, or if they're not epics, experiences where you're given 100% physically, mentally, emotionally. It takes a toll, I mean, physiologically, I think it takes a toll on your adrenal glands, perhaps, the stress.
Yes.
And then, and being in those situations. So I think that I feel like each time I went out, say on a big expedition or a big climb, then I gave it 100%, because I spread them out. I didn't go back to back to back. So I was fully prepared physically. I wasn't still worn down from the last trip. I was really amped. I was ready to go. And I prepared, done all the research, prepared all my gear, had exactly what I needed, figured out as well as I could, strategy. And so I made each trip count. Like I said, I gave each trip 100%. And I think that helped me keep my career going without getting burned out prematurely. And also just the ability to make good decisions. I felt like I was physically and mentally in the headspace to make good decisions, even when they were life and death decisions where I was putting everything on the line. I think you've only got so many of those experiences in your body.
Yeah, no, that's well put. And it's an interesting aspect of mountaineering, alpine climbing, and being in those fearsome environments that I think doesn't come across as vividly as obviously the sport does, and the expanses. I mean, I was just talking to somebody recently who had not climbed, but they had seen people climbing, and they were talking about like how it seems to them, it seemed like such a laid back sort of sport. And I feel like I don't go very far when I try to explain climbing to non-climbers.
Mm-hmm.
But the point that you made is not just the physical hazards and the physical, let's say, the suffering, but it's also the constant mental stress of making the right decisions in order to survive and complete the expedition and come back. And I can imagine that over a lifetime, it adds up like that. So yeah, it's not just your joints that have suffered, it's also your
brain.
your brain and your mental fortitude that yeah, even for somebody like you, and it's funny that how you talk about that you were planned and calculated, because to the outsider it would seem that you just did not stop. Like you just went and did one thing after the other. But yes, obviously there was a method to the madness, and that's maybe one reason for your longevity in the sport, because you were able to manage, yeah, and plan both the physical and the mental toll. Kitty, you've had so many incredible ascents, right? And yeah, I mean, close by to home, up north in Alaska, and then things that you were able to complete out in the Himalayas. And obviously, yeah, don't have time to talk about most of them. But if you had to choose one story that captures
Mm-hmm.
what's your climbing career, I mean, I know it's hard, but
Mm.
what might that story be?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. And then going back though, because I wanted to finish up on what you were talking about in terms of how alpine climbing might seem simple to somebody who doesn't understand, like just putting one foot in front of the other. But the more technical the objective is, the more complicated it becomes as well. Because, and so I look at it like a chess game, because you have to take all the factors into consideration when you're figuring out your strategy. So, I mean, to start with, you have to find the right partner. So the right partner not only has to have the same interest in the same route on the same peak, but also has to have the time and the money, but also has to have a similar range of risk tolerance, and then also has to be a team player, and clearly has to be fit. People might think of that right off, but that's a given, right? And so, and then has to have the technical skills. So, but there's those other factors that people may not have thought about. And because success comes down to more than just, did you get the right weather? How did you play with the cards that you were dealt? So there's that. There's the partners, but then there's weigh in the weather, weigh in avalanche conditions, route finding, altitude, effects of altitude, and then your partners and your strengths and weaknesses and how they complement each other, and how much gear, what kind of gear, how much food, the whole.
I mean, the calculations are like infinite, to find that kind of climbing partner who would make a worthy companion to be able to accomplish big things.
Yeah. And then the partner is just the most important part of it. But then you, again, like you said, all these other factors weigh in as well, and they're always changing. It could be the health of your partner, or it could be that's another factor that I forgot to mention. But these things are always changing, and so you're always thinking like, what if this happens, then what? So that you can anticipate, so that you can move, because you usually don't have big weather windows, and so it's all a lot of strategy that goes into it.
100%, for sure. Going back to thanks for helping us understand some of that dynamic.
Right.
Yeah, and just going back to that thing I was trying to I wanted to ask you, which is yes, I'm sure all of your stories have had epic partnerships, but is there maybe one epic, one ascent that you could take us into, which may capture some of those things?
Right. I mean, out of all of them, because I have a lot of stories to tell, but the one that I keep going back to is Makalu, which was my biggest achievement, was the West Pillar on Makalu, and it was only the second or third ascent. And so the West Pillar had been climbed. Yeah, it had been climbed by some French back in 1970 something. There was a team of men supported by Sherpas and oxygen, but it was pretty major achievement at the time because it's like 10,000 feet of technical climbing. Then John Ross Kelly, who is the best or well-known alpinist in the United States at the time, summited. His was the second ascent. He was, there were 4 of them. And in the end, he ended up summiting alone. And then he barely made it back down. He was tired and sat down to take a nap, but you know what happens, sometimes you don't wake up. He knew that too, but he was just so exhausted. And then he saw lights of his partner's tents just below, and then that inspired him, motivated him to not take that nap, which could have been the end, and to make it down. And I called him and said, what do we need? How do we do this? And I wanted to go alpine style, fully alpine style, but he said, well, we brought 10,000 feet of fixed line and we used it all. I'm like, well, okay. Because the problem is that there's too much distance between good camp and place where you could set up a tent. So you can't acclimatize. It's just really tricky strategically to be able to pull this off fully alpine style. So I thought, well, okay, I mean, if the best climber in the world brought 10,000 feet of rope, that's what we're going to do too. So we brought 10,000 feet of rope. There's like 1,000 feet in each potato sack, and none of us had ever.
Hang on, you brought 10,000 feet of rope.
Yeah, and this expedition cost us $5,000 a piece, including airfare. This was in 1990. So I was still going pretty fast and light. Like my first expedition, it cost like $3,000 a piece, including airfare. But anyway, so yeah, just to get into base camp, you have to, it's 100 miles just to get into base camp. And you cross over 3 14,000 foot passes. Like the porters are carrying these loads through snow. We're breaking trail, and they're following us through snow in like their flip-flops because they sold all their shoes we gave them. Carrying the loads, and we get to base camp, and so we then we had these ropes in potato sacks, and we didn't know what to do because none of us had ever strung out 1,000 feet of rope. But we figured it out, and we figured that we would work in teams of 2, but I think you'd get to lead for 2 days, and then you'd have to support, carry loads for 4 days. And so that nobody would get burned out just carrying loads, like there's no fun and glory in that. And so, so we did that. And I think that was a big part of keeping the motivation going because, well, for one thing, to start with, it's pretty overwhelming just standing in base camp at 17,000 feet and looking up at the summit, which is 28,000 something. Yeah, it's big. And so you just sort of have to break it down, take it step by step, and keep going and stay motivated and stay healthy and stay fit. And for example, camp 2 was you went up this talus field to Camp 1, which is like 19,000 something, and then you have this mile-long knife edge ridge, and it wasn't that technical, but it was a knife edge ridge, and if you got blown over in the howling winds, like you're done. It's super exposed. So that's when we fixed that part to Camp 2, which was, there was a big crevasse, but you could go inside the crevasse, and there was like a room that was like, okay, cool. This is like the bedroom. Here's the bathroom. Here's our front porch. And so it was pretty nice. So we, over time, we ended up spending weeks at just camped at 21,000 feet. That was sort of our advanced base camp. And then Camp 3 was at 23,000 feet. And you have to go across traverse across a terrible traverse because the ridge becomes like steep rock that you can't, it's not really good climbing there. So you sort of do this traverse, and then you go up, and then it's mixed climbing up to Camp 3, which was like another crevasse, but it was cold, and people didn't really recover sleep very well at Camp 3 at 23,000 feet.
Were you guys doing it with oxygen or
No,
without?
No.
No?
Like, we weren't using oxygen or Sherpas and stuff. Because, I mean, even though we're fixing 10,000 feet, we were still trying to go as fast and light as we could, but it wasn't very light. So anyway, people started, like, one partner ended up, he was coughing so hard he broke his rib, broke a rib, we think. And another one couldn't keep food down because you can, and ended up, well, you don't metabolize food efficiently above 14,000 feet. So you're trying to eat to keep the calories in, but you're not metabolizing. And so it's almost like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing. And so I attribute my success at altitude my ability solely to my ability to be able to eat. I'm a good eater. Yeah.
Actually, curious. This fun question. So
I should have charged.
Yeah, fun question. Fun question. So so when was this again, Kitty?
1990.
Remind us, please.
1990.
Okay. So was this before the era of, let's say, alpine style, like, freeze dried foods? What were you eating back then?
No, it wasn't. We had freeze dried food. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, but even then, that's hard to eat at that type of
your
altitude.
body just doesn't perform at altitude the way it does at low altitude. So physiologically, and because some doctors did a study because there were some miners in Peru that were having trouble living at this work camp. They were all losing weight, and they just didn't have the energy. And so this is actually a medically proven fact that your body doesn't metabolize food efficiently above 14. So you can imagine spending weeks above 14, above 21 at a time. And then you go up to 23. And so another couple partners ended up having to bail there. And then before we got to 25,000 feet, which was a crux, another partner couldn't go any further, had run out of energy. So we're over a month in, right, into this expedition. The whole expedition took us 60 days. So we're trying to maintain strength. And we got to the crux at 25,000 feet, which was an overhanging off width.
Oh, wow.
And partner Colin Grissom volunteered to lead it and got up we got to our camp at 25.5. That's the last camp. And then we spent the night, and then we were going to take an acclimatization day, and then spend another second night at 25.5. And then the next day we set out for the summit, but the winds were so strong we couldn't make it. So we had to turn back around. So that's the third night at 25.5. And Colin said his bronchitis had gotten so bad he couldn't try again. And so the next day he went down alone and made it all the way down. And John and Scott and I spent another night. I think we spent another night, and then, or maybe it was that next day, we went for the summit. We made the summit, came down, spent the night, and then the next day went down. So it was like 4 or 5 nights at 25.5 without oxygen.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And so we made it down. But, the thing that I realized, and then our teammates spent the whole rest of the time getting all of our fixed lines off the mountain. The thing is that, when I think about this expedition, I think that there's no way that John and I could have summited without the combined effort of each of those team members, what each person contributed individually was irreplaceable. And so it was it's the ideal scenario of example of what can be accomplished through the synergy of perfect teamwork. And so in all of my everyday life now, that's what I hold as my standard or ideal, what I'd like to reach again through all of my my projects.
Well, Kitty, that sounds like a lot of pressure for people who interact with you on a day-to-day basis. I already feel sorry for people, your delivery person, maybe somebody who helps with your garden. I'm just kidding. Were you
that way.
So, Kitty, did you expect this group effort to come together so beautifully in harmony? Was this planned and expected, or were you also surprised at how well all the different parts, the different humans executed to help you guys get to the top?
Yeah, I would have to say I didn't really plan it out, and I didn't really know how I was going to deal with it, because I was in a awkward position a little bit, because I was the leader of the expedition, but all of my partners were equally or more qualified as a climber and as a leader than I was. So I was in awe of every single one of my teammates. But I really don't like being a leader in terms of telling people what to do. I prefer that we figure out things together, so that there's no one person telling people what to do, and everybody's contributing equally. And again, I think the biggest thing that I did as a leader was suggest that we take turns leading, because that's what everybody wants to do. And the biggest problem that you might have is somebody losing motivation, because we needed each person and the individual skills that they brought to the team. So that was the one single thing that I did that as a leader that made, I think, maybe all the difference in the world.
That is insightful, and I think worth a little bit of probing. So you talked about how you were able to lead in a way where you were not directing people or telling people what to do. Instead, you were maybe opening the door for them. Can you speak a little bit about that? Because outside of this, you do all these other things, right? So I'm guessing that your leadership style has only gotten, let's say, more refined, more polished in the decades hence. So yeah, how do you lead, and how do you find that balance between helping people rise to the occasion, but not cloying them with tasks?
Hello, friends. Just a quick break. This is not an ad. If you have been enjoying these conversations, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. It is where I go deeper, sharing stories, reflections, and behind the scenes insights that don't always make it into the podcast. I write about what I'm learning from elite athletes and how to stay ageless in body and mind. If you have ever wanted a thoughtful, inspiring read that ties it all together: training, aging, mindset, and awe, you will love this. You can find the link in the show notes, or just head to agelessathlete.co. Again, www.agelessathlete.co, that is, to sign up. And yeah, just a couple of emails a month, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Absolutely no spam ever. Okay, back to the show.
Yeah, it's been a learning, it still is a learning situation for me, especially now that I'm working with minority populations. I don't know if that's the right word, but I've been involved with BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQ plus, but mainly my work right now in the past 2 or 3 years has been with Indigenous people. And I've been learning not to speak for other people. It's really important. It's hard to stop myself because I'm used to speaking. I'm used to talking. If you get me going,
Well, I'm glad. I'm saying that that's one talent of yours that I'm glad to have, because I'm here to have you speak.
Thank you. And anyway, but I can't say. I try to hold myself back from speaking for other populations that I'm not a part of, and also leadership. Like, so my role as an ally, my job, I feel like, is to open doors, and to listen. I learn a lot when I listen to other people. The variety of thought, the variety of people, and then in general cultures in our world, is fascinating. And then we won't always understand. I won't always understand my husband. Maybe I never will, but but it's fascinating.
Maybe. I'm sorry, but maybe that is one, surprise ingredient to, I don't know, a good relationship. I mean, you want to understand the other person, but maybe not completely. Keep that surprise, keep that element of like
mystery.
Kitty, what is? Yeah, I mean, this is a bit of a segue, but a fascinating one. What is the secret to being a good listener? What have you learned?
Well, what I'm learning right now, especially right now, is there's polarization in America that there hasn't been before, or to the degree that we haven't had before, I believe. And I believe that a lot of times we're caught up in listening with the intent of how do I respond? And in particular, like I have to do that right now in this conversation with you, but in particular, when you have the intent of changing, you want to change somebody's mind, or my dad was an attorney, and I thought, man, it'd be really great if you could always get people to agree with what you think, and then I started realizing they're like, wait, maybe you don't want that. I mean, maybe it'd be a bully. Maybe it's not right to always get your way, because maybe you're not right all the time. And I think that and so now I'm trying to learn to listen with the intent of understanding what the other person is trying to say.
Simple words, but maybe requires dedicated focus, and maybe even unlearning so many habits and traits we have. Kitty, you have been working with these populations. The little that I know, yes, some of the populations you talked about, some of the work that you're doing with enabling access, with helping maybe mitigate some of the effects of climate change. You're working with disenfranchised groups. I can't believe I actually was able to say that word. So you've been working with these groups. You pointed to the indigenous, I think the Navajo Indian populations where you are. And, here you are, this white woman who's known for mountaineering, a sport and places that most of the people you're working with will never go to or attempt, right? And how do you win the trust of these people? Because they have to let you in the door as as you are trying to do things together with them. And I asked this because I was just thinking about this friend of mine. He's a tall white guy from Wisconsin who works with climate justice, with prison justice reform. So he's sitting down, he goes to these rooms with, full of, let's say, minority populations who have this inherent distrust,
Yes.
accumulated for like white people. So yeah, I've heard him talk about the challenge he has working with. So I'm just curious, like, how have you learned how to be trusted?
I mean, I have to say it's hard work. I haven't always been trusted. There have been times where people have shut the door on me and they didn't recognize that my intent is good. And I think that those people just aren't ready to forgive. And there's no judgment there. It's everybody's, it takes time. I mean, I don't know, but that's what I imagine. And so, but others are ready. And so I think it takes just showing up and being consistent so that they know that this isn't just like a one and done deal. Because, definitely, it seems like they're definitely wondering what your motives are, like what's in it for you, right? Because there's been so much history of betrayal in the past, right? And they have to work through that, or we have to work through that, I should say. And I'm still learning. I don't always get it right, but I try as much as I can to get feedback. Like, is this right? How does this sound when I write something or putting something out there? And I read this book called Carbon Sovereignty that really changed my way of thinking, because until I read the book, I thought colonialism was a one-time land grab. And by the end of the book, I realized that it's much more than that it continues in subtle ways today, everywhere. So I really rely on a lot of my indigenous friends to mentor me and with a large degree of forgiveness, because I'm trying, but I don't know. So I think listening, I've been studying Navajo, trying to learn to speak Navajo for over a year, and turning opportunities completely over to them. So trying to learn to be a good ally. This process.
Giri, yeah, I mean, maybe that is one proven secret but not so secret way of winning somebody's trust, to be able to speak in their language. And because that just cuts through all the noise. I feel I remember reading somewhere that, again, back in the colonial days, let's say back in the more overt colonial days, we would have these, English or British, whatever, aristocrats in India. I come from India, so yeah, I read some of that stuff growing up. And, they would be managing like vast estates, employing, I don't know, thousands and thousands of local people, right? And I remember reading that they struggled with winning the trust of their local populations, right? And it was also mentioned, matter of factly, that despite living in India for decades, they didn't even learn how to say hello, how are you?
Oh my God.
So I feel like, yeah, I mean, if one constantly expects the other person to bend to their will,
right,
starting with, hey, I'm in your land and I'm asking you to do my bidding or work with me, but you have to learn my language.
Thank
so anyway,
you.
so
the first word that I would learn in a foreign language is thank you, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, agreed. Yes, and I believe I remember reading that you even took some trouble to learn Nepalese, maybe, or
Nepalese
try
is
to, or
easy. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah. 'Cause
Nepalese
I
is
guided over there and climbed over there so much, and it was fun. And it was funny because I was just with my son and a bunch of his friends, and we were talking about language or something, and I can still remember how to count to 10 in Nepalese, like decades later. Because hiking on the trail, when I would like say, okay, tell me if I have this right. And I would count to 100 in Nepalese. And the porters, were just like, oh my, this lady, she would give it up, because every single day I'd
yeah,
count 100 Nepalese at the beginning of the day.
yes. Maybe you go to Nepal and like you learn to say namaste, and maybe the second thing you learn to say is no more dal bhat, because
Yeah.
getting a couple of through lines there that I want to pick up on. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I have to ask you this, which is the work you're doing today, and this work, yeah, this continues to inform your life. I mean, I feel like you come from such a unique place. Maybe not the known places,
Mhm.
in the Rockies or out in California, where we find a lot of America's climbers, alpinists coming from.
Mhm.
You grew up in the deep south,
Mhm.
and you grew up in a very different world than the one you live in. And I just wonder, like, if that both informs the work you
Mhm.
do, and maybe at another level, maybe there is, I'm trying to, if you'll forgive me for being a little blunt here,
Yeah.
if there is, some part of you that wants to make, I don't know, just some kind of
Friends.
corrections,
Yeah.
corrections for
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
corrections for
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, it's complicated because when you question your motivations, your motives, sometimes you don't even know. You don't even know yourself that well. You're like, where is this coming from? Like, is it coming from this or coming from that? And it makes perfect sense for me coming from a deep Southern history to be trying to make amends for that history, that family history, in my work with, what did you call them, underprivileged populations, or under whatever was a big word that you spoke. Yeah. Remember,
Disenfranchised.
you
I am sharp today. I
disenfranchised,
had my
right? That
coffee
was
today.
the word. That was the word. You did such a good job with that. Anyway, so I could, it's perfectly logical that's where this could be coming from. This desire, but the other thing is that, I mean, my whole life is gone along this path that I totally couldn't have foreseen. Like, I never expected to be a climber because I was afraid of heights. So I went to Outward Bound, and even though I was afraid of heights, I ended up becoming a climber. And then I never wanted to learn foreign languages in high school. It was a requirement, but I didn't see the purpose because I didn't see that I would foresee that I would be working in other countries. Like, I told my French teacher, no company is ever going to send me to France to work. I didn't know what I was going to do for work, but I didn't see that. And she said, well, you need to appreciate other cultures. And then I end up being an international mountain guide, guiding mostly in Peru, Bolivia, and Nepal. And then I didn't anticipate speaking in public because I'm afraid speaking in public, and I ended up giving a TED talk. And then I didn't anticipate being an ambassador for Lion Energy, talking about batteries and solar power, because I know nothing about electricity. Like, one time I tried to straighten this prong in a Christmas tree light with a knife, and the thing was plugged into the wall. I didn't know, and I mean, I know nothing. And here I am. And the thing is that I really believe that I've been called to do these things. And so I'm just going through the doors that are being opened for me. and trying to
Yeah.
share with others.
Kitty, you grew up in South Carolina, in Greenville.
Yeah.
So funnily enough, I also lived next door to you in Charlotte for many years.
Oh, wow.
In the 2000s. So that's where I discovered rock climbing. And that whole area, I guess Charlotte calls itself the New South, whatever that means. But for sure, like, you cross the border into South Carolina and the air smells different.
Yeah.
It's a bit more traditional, more conservative. And
Yeah.
the cultural expectations for women are strong. And I'm talking about the 2000s, a few decades before, a few decades after
Yeah, right.
your time, right?
Exactly.
And those currents run they run deep, right?
Yeah.
And so here's a question, maybe going back to some of your roots. Your path into the sport is not typical. But I'm wondering if there's a funny way your environment shaped your decision to carve this path, because one thing I think most of us know, and I can just tell from this conversation, is you do not come across as the kind of person who will follow what others will lay out for you. So yeah, I'm just curious, like
yeah, I
mean,
answer that.
were you breaking the rules, or were you simply creating freedom that is around you, and maybe other people, other women? Because even in the mid 2000s, when I was climbing back in West Virginia, back in North Carolina and in West Virginia, like there were very few women around me.
Yeah.
20 plus years ago, and then 40 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like, what was it about you, your mindset, what you wanted for yourself that pushed you in this direction?
Yeah, well, you might be able to relate to this, or I'm sure some listeners might be able to, but when I was a teenager, I wanted to go hike on the Appalachian Trail with some friends, with some girlfriends, and my mom said no because we didn't have enough experience. So, when you're told no, like, you're just like, yeah, screw that, I'm going to do this. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to get the skills. So my mom will let me go hiking on the Appalachian Trail with my girlfriends, and I can do it safely, And so I went to the North Carolina Outward Bound School. And that's when I first started rock climbing and faced the Sphere Heights. And before I went, I decided, well, I'm going to be in the best shape that I could ever be in. So I was already a skier and a tennis player, and I was pretty driven and just skied all the time. Played tennis all the time. And so I started running. So I got to where I was running 8 miles a day, every day. And before I went to Outward Bound, so I was, I was ready. Like, I'm like, this isn't gonna break me. And when I went there, that might have been when I started thinking about living each day like it might be your last. And when you do that, because it's not every day is not a given, but we take it for granted, right? And
wait a second. So you grew up in this, place. Like, how did you suddenly find this conviction? Like, were you were you that dedicated, obsessive, like growing up?
It's all false sense of security. And down south, like, here's stereotypes, but there's girls or women walking around like, oh, how are you doing today? And they're just like, it's all like surface level, and how many friends do you have? And see and be seen, in these certain places. And it's all like this surface level. And like, I really want to dig deep. Like, I want to know, like, I want to focus on what really matters, what's really important, because that's where we find ultimate just trying to understand that. Again, these are all, everything we have is a blessing. and we don't know how long it's here for. And we need to figure this out. I just have this, this need to understand what really matters and to live my life in a way that really matters, because I don't know how long I'll have it. I don't know how long I'll have my health. I don't know how long I'll have my friends. I don't know how long it'll eventually it all gets taken away. It goes away. It's gone.
Certainly. Well, your mom maybe opened the doors by telling you not to do something, and and little did she know.
She know what she did, what she created, she started.
And I believe that, yeah, you were already an adult, or at least like older when you started climbing. Was there another path that was also laid out for you? Had you not chosen to get into climbing and Outward Bound and this path, was there a different path?
Well, the expectations down south are you get married and you have a husband and you're you take care of the house and the kids, and that's the path you're on. That's it.
Was it difficult for your family?
Was it
difficult for your family, Kitty, to accept this path? I feel like sometimes parents see this thing in their child, as knowing as parents are, sometimes they can fail to see some things that are so obvious. So at what point perhaps did your parents accept that, or maybe they never accepted that?
Yeah, no, I shared with them openly so that they would be better prepared if I didn't come back from a trip, because I had another friend who didn't come back from a trip, and his parents thought he was just out hiking. I mean, they didn't have a clue, so it was pretty shocking for them. But I think it was hard on them, because back in the day when you went on an expedition, say went on a trip to Nepal or India or Pakistan, they wouldn't hear back then. You could send letters, but you'd be home before the letter got home. There wasn't cell service. There wasn't internet back then. There were only collect phone calls from a payphone. So
yeah,
so they wouldn't hear from me.
Good point for like some of our younger listeners, that this was certainly this was the era before social media, before cell phones,
right?
Before you could get service everywhere. Like once you left home, yeah, you may not hear from your family, or they won't hear from you for a while. So maybe that was good in a way, like
yeah.
Your parents, I guess they didn't really know what happened until you came home, and then at some point they realized that you had done something formidable.
Yeah.
And going back to the Makalu story for a second, it seems like beyond some of your gifts, maybe your natural gifts, you talked about being able to eat well, reasonably well at altitude. It seems like you also have this gift or this learned skill to be able to suffer and to be able to, which I mean, it is certainly it is a required attribute in alpine climbing, but I mean there are degrees. You seem to have found this focus, and I'm just curious what that balance is, because I believe for a while you really pared down your living, right?
Yeah.
You were in the back of a car,
Subaru.
maybe SUV, right? I love climbing and all of that, but I think that myself and most of us don't have that capacity to be able to constrain our living to that kind of simplicity. So tell us about that time.
Yeah. What I did, I was in at University of Vermont, and this guy had asked me to do the presidential traverse in winter in a single push. And I'd never done anything like that. I thought, yeah, this would be interesting, and it was a full moon. So we started out and we had snowshoes, but we're like, we don't need these. So we put them back in the car. And then before you know it, we're actually post-holing, and it took a lot of energy and a lot more time than we anticipated. By the time we got to the top of Mount Washington, this guy was getting hypothermic. I had insisted that we each bring sleeping bags because, I'm like, God, what's the worst thing that could happen? Like, we could end up, somebody gets hurt above tree line. It's like, we need to have sleeping bags. And so we got up there, and there's a tower, building up there, but it was closed. It was locked. Nobody was there. We couldn't get in. And there was sort of this corner where the wind was blowing past it, so that it was protected. An inside corner was protected from the wind. And so I said, well, just get in your sleeping bag here, and I'll wake you up in a couple hours. I woke up, I'd fallen asleep, and I was shivering. So I started doing jumping jacks, and that didn't warm me up. And so then I ate a Snickers bar, and I got warm right away. And so I realized, like, wow, okay, I always need to have a Snickers bar with me. But anyway, it was challenging. It was really beautiful. The sunrise, it was just a bright red ball in the sky that came up over the mountains, just amazing. And I was intrigued, but I also, again, I was thinking about, okay, what really matters? What do you need? What can you get away without? What's extra baggage? And it's this thought of this minimalism that's helped me all along the way in being a successful alpinist. But I also think that it goes along with the thought of voluntary simplicity, and which is about focusing on the things that really matter, so that you don't spend time and energy. You have limited time and energy in your life, right? And so you don't want to spend it on the things that aren't important. You want to be able to focus on what's most important, and these other things just become a distraction. The extra food, the extra clothes, the extra whatever it is that you don't need to accomplish your goal, whatever that is.
Can you actually just describe what that existence for you was like?
Oh, yeah. I'd love to. I was in a Subaru, and what I did was I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is, so after that experience, I thought, okay, I was going to graduate in December. So it's going to spend January in Colorado, February in Wyoming, and March in the Cascades, and April in the Palisades. And so I took the back seat out of my Subaru, and I could put a foot locker there, and then put this plywood board fit level on the rear wheel wells and the foot locker. And so I could sleep on that and hide stuff underneath the board, and then keep stuff in my foot locker. And then I only had 2 of everything, because you don't want to have too much, because otherwise you can't find anything and it takes up space. So all you need is like 2 pairs of long pants, 2 pairs of underwear, 2 pairs of socks, 2 long sleeve shirts, right? That's it. Hat, gloves. And so I had everything pared down, just lived out of there. And I didn't have, any bills, because I didn't rent a house. So I had no bills. So I didn't really have any mail, and I didn't have a cell phone back then, because they didn't exist. And then I just would set aside $3,000 a year to live off of. So I'd get $3,000 out at the beginning of the year, like January 1st, in traveler's checks, drive out west, and then start alpine climbing in the wintertime. And then money I made working for Outward Bound or working for American Alpine Institute, I would just put in the bank to save until the next year. And so I had $14 a week for food. So that was $2 a day. And what I learned from my friend Lyle Dean was that, like, you can live on that. Like, you eat vegetables, aren't very expensive. And made these giant pancakes. They were homemade pancakes, but they were like, you couldn't eat one. You couldn't finish one. It was so heavy. So you had to put it in your pocket, because it's like, you know, you're going to be going. You're going to be going for hours and hours and hours.
Wow. And how long did you
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7 years in the back of a Subaru.
Yeah. I mean, when I was
And-
working for American Alpine Institute, I just had to park my car somewhere and then fly overseas. And, you know, again, I wasn't paying rent in Bolivia.
That's
know?
true.
Right.
That's true. Okay, fun question. Was there any point in those years, again, you know, living this life of simplicity and focus, where maybe you thought you had pushed things too far? I mean, again, like I said, I'm in a van, but there are moments, times when I'm like, oh gosh, you know, I'm here parked on the side of this highway in central Mexico, and I'm connected to all of technology, but my van stove is not working and I cannot make a hot meal, right? So for me, that I feel like that was the height of privation. Sorry, but like that was what it was. So compared to like your time, like what might have been maybe, let's say, the nadir, or maybe the zenith. I don't know. It could be one and the same.
You know, it was easy. I was in my 20s. This other technology didn't exist. So there might have been less temptations or distractions then, but it was easy. It was fun. When I decided, well, I'm not going to live with anybody because that's before I get married, because that's too much of a commitment. Like either they're committed to me and I'm moving out of the Subaru, or they're not. You know, and I'm going to live in the Subaru and keep doing my thing.
And maybe two people in a Subaru, maybe that might have been too much, even for you. That might have been too much.
That wouldn't have worked. So it's like, okay, when I found the perfect person, then that was when things were going to change. Like I would move out of the Subaru, I would have an address, might have bills to pay, and that was going to be it. But 7 years, and it all worked out. It was a good 7 years.
It's a really fun, in a way, episode of your life. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
But I think there is a profound lesson here. And do you think our culture today has lost touch with that kind of simplicity?
I imagine that it's more challenging for people because we're in constant contact. Yeah, I mean, we have that ability. So, there's always good. There's good and bad. Like you can get better weather forecasts in the Himalayas if you have set up with a friend that you can get the forecast through your device. So it's kind of different. There's more information, so you can be better prepared. I guess the challenges are different.
I agree that they're different, and technology enables a lot of things, but I also think that this point that you made, which was that when one has that kind of focus, it simplifies things. Then one doesn't care if one may not have lots of clothes or a fancy meal for dinner. And I don't know, maybe you have some words on like how people listening.
Yeah, I do.
Listening, who may not be climbers, or even athletes, how can they find that focus? Because I think all of us need this is a time of like deep mental crisis in this country. How can we find that focus and simplicity?
Yeah, well, for me, it's nature, outdoors. Nature is one thing that's not man-made. And so there's a deeper connection there that when you talk about mental health, and you can't even separate it from, you can't compartmentalize, I don't think, nature in an indigenous way of thinking the way you can in, say, my culture or my upbringing background, whatever. There's some of these values that help me feel a connection to indigenous people when I view their relationship with the earth and everything in it as being inextricably related. and we separate things out. We categorize things. And today, a kid could grow up in a city and not be able to develop a relationship with the outdoors. And I feel that is unfortunate for that kid, because the outdoors is, it's the real world.
No, thank you. I think, yeah, there are probably all kinds of complex solution remedies for combating our fragile mental health.
Yeah.
But one so short way is exposure to nature.
Yeah.
And the healing that can bring. And I mean, it's,
yeah,
like you said, it's easier said than done, because if your upbringing doesn't bring you to nature, or you find some kind of calling like you did, then one might just stay ignorant of that power.
Yeah.
And Kitty, maybe this is a good point to ask you a little bit about the work you did with co-founding your company and your organization. I think you have a new name. I think it used to be called Chicks with Pigs. It's called something else now. And I'm just curious, like, you probably get clients of all kinds of backgrounds, but do you see and do you seek for that kind of transformation to occur in your clients, more than just helping them learn technical skills to be able to rock climb or ice climb? Do you see people return with a deeper appreciation for these places?
Yeah. So it was started, Chicks with Picks was started back in like 1999, I think, by Kim Reynolds, who is a friend of mine. And I was the first, started guiding for her, teaching for her the very first year, taught every year since. And then I think it was like 2015, 14, we myself and 4 other guides bought the business from her. And she had already added rock climbing, and we called it those clinics Chicks Rock. And then we started skiing, and that was Chicks with Sticks. And then there was alpine climbing. So we called the whole thing Chicks Climbing and Skiing after a while. And we ended up selling that during COVID. Yeah. So I'm officially retired now, although I'm kind of working with my projects. The thing about Chicks was when Kim started it, the only female ice climbers we saw in the Uray Ice Park were women who were belaying their male partners, and their male partners were setting up the anchors and leading the climbs if they were leading the routes. And Kim's like, this has got to change. And so that's why she started Chicks with Picks. And I feel like it has changed. If you go in the Uray Ice Park in the winter, you see just as many women climbers leading as men and climbing as well as men. So what I've learned, and also from listening to this researcher on the differences between men and women is that women learn better in typically learn better in all women environments, because they're less intimidated to ask questions. And that's how you learn the best, is by asking questions. And so these women that came to these clinics progressed quite quickly, and it made a difference in their lives. The confidence that they gained through climbing transferred into other areas of their lives, with their marriages, with their work. The lessons that you learn in climbing, I've seen them transferred there through the clinics at Chicks Climbing and Skiing. Also, there's another story I want to tell you. Was working with Hera Foundation, women with ovarian cancer, and I was asked to give a slideshow once, and I thought about it, and thought about what it must be like, because I haven't experienced it myself. But to live with cancer and not know if you're going to live or die, and if you're going to survive. And then I realized, like, I've been in this situation myself climbing, and where specifically I talked about an experience on Telly Sagar where we were up at like 21,000 feet in a snowstorm in a portaledge. So, portaledge, this was in 1986, where Andy Selters and I were trying a new route on the North Face. And there weren't any portaledges out on the market light enough. I mean, clearly, this was like a vertical face it started as a snow cone, sort of, that led up to really brilliant granite and mixed climbing. And then there was a rotten shale layer above that, and then another snow cone to the summit. So we designed and built a portaledge with the help of a friend, Rick Lipke. And this ledge was triangular shaped. It was 6 feet wide at the widest and 4 feet wide at the widest and 6 feet long. And Andy is over 6 feet tall, so it was a bit of a squinch for him. But so here we are, like, on this platform, right? Triangular platform, 6 feet long at the longest, 4 feet wide at the widest. And this storm came in, and it lasted for 8 days. So the snow started pounding, coming down off the snow cone at the top. These avalanches started coming down regularly. And the first avalanche that hit our portaledge, we have a fly over it, but we're hanging back. There wasn't place for like pitons or much less cams. So we were hanging off ice screws, which is probably the first time in history that had ever been done. I can't remember how many ice screws we had, because we were scared to death, right? To spend the night hanging off ice screws. But anyway, those first, and we had miscalculated the stress that would be put on one of the corners of the ledge, and that corner broke, like, I think our first night out. So we had to tie it back together with webbing. So anyway, the first avalanche that hit our portaledge, I'm just holding on to the sides of the ledge, just praying, that the anchors would hold and it'd be okay. And the avalanche went over and everything was okay. These avalanches started coming down regularly as the wall was shedding snow. It was a big storm. This storm lasted for 8 days. So 8 days, we're sitting here in this, laying in this ledge, not knowing if we were going to survive.
Oh my God.
I mean, because I've been in long storms before, but never 8 days. And so you're in limbo. You don't know if you're going to live or die. So you can't plan ahead. And so what we would do is we would just get into a routine, because routines provide sort of a sense of security or routineness, something you can count on if you have routine when you're in a state of limbo. And so we would get up in the morning and make a cup of hot tea, have a pilot biscuit with peanut butter on it or something. And then lunch, we'd have ramen noodles, and then dinner, we would maybe split a freeze-dried dinner. And then in between time, we would, take a nap after breakfast, after lunch. And then other than that, Andy had an encyclopedic memory. So I would ask him, like, the history of whatever, and that was the same thing every day, all day, just laying on your back. And there was nothing to look forward to, because you didn't know. These lessons you learn, these things you learn from climbing that are that help you as you navigate daily life. Because the thing is that daily life is, people call it daily or normal or whatever, but when you think about it, the normal experiences that people go through are extraordinary events. I mean, the birth of a child is an extraordinary event. Celebrate the graduation from high school or college, a big game that you played in that, is like, these are extraordinary events that are available to everybody. That's part of normal life. And that, life is really cool that way, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not privileged because I got to stand on the summit of Makalu. I mean, I am, but you know what? I mean, others have had experiences that are extraordinary too, but we call them normal because everybody gets to do it, but they're extraordinary.
I think somebody's ordinary experience could be extraordinary for somebody else. Like, I'm not a parent. Like, I have a fur baby,
Yeah.
but I don't have kids, right?
Yeah.
And I hang out with family members and friends who have kids.
Yeah.
And they're asking me about, like, my off the beaten path life.
Yeah.
And, like, expressing some level of, combination of, I don't know, both awe and maybe even disdain. but the thing is, the kind of stuff you've had, it's obviously boggles the mind, right?
Mm.
Being on the side of a mountain way off in the frontiers of this planet for 8 days. But at the same time, like, somebody having a baby, for me, that is an absolutely jaw-dropping event, because it's normalized, but it is still a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking of this, like, these days you hear of psychologists like talk about like how one cure for like a lot of our maladies is our addiction to like our phones. And I'm like, well, if you end up on a portal edge in South Asia for like 8 days in a blizzard, I mean, that's one way to force the addiction. Coming to the end of our conversation, it's been amazing. I think you once said that you didn't expect to live past 30.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, here you are, decades later, you are still climbing, you're teaching, I mean, you're thriving in all the ways that I can see. So what does being ageless mean to you?
Yeah, boy, time is just mysterious, isn't it? The way it goes by and you change and you don't feel like you're different, but you are different. I mean, you look in the mirror and you are different, right? And it's just, I don't know, in your mind, you still may have the drive of a 20-year-old, but your body, even if you're fit and healthy, is not performing at the same level. Like, I just went for a run with my 20-year-old son, or he's in his 20s, and it's like, yeah. My mind might be there, but my body's not, even though I'm taking care of it, right? So it's just, time's a funny thing. So, boy, I don't know. I think for me, it's just important to, when I go for a run, I don't always feel like going for a run, but then I remind myself that, like, hey, I'm not always going to be able to run. So I need to run because I can, because I've got this blessing. And the way you show appreciation is you use it, this healthy body, this fit body. And so that is a big motivation to keep going in athletics when I don't feel like, when I may not be otherwise motivated. And I think practicing daily, consistency, especially as an aging athlete. I mean, yes, we're all aging, but an aged athlete. I think that consistency is important. And so that's why I'm actually trying not to travel as much, so that I can be super consistent. Yeah, I mean, I have a routine, that I'm trying to keep up with.
Sure. Yeah. I would love to spend a minute on that routine. So, yeah, obviously, belief and desire is a big part. Like, you
Mhm.
want to go climbing and you want to be able to run and enjoy your body, movement, and nature. But,
Mhm.
yeah, are there any specific things that you've learned and developed? Like, it could be, physical practices with the way you look after yourself, exercise, mobility, maybe diet, things that have worked for you and maybe things that have not?
I'm a creature of like I've got these. I eat the same thing every day except for dinner at the same time every day, and
Don't
because
tell me
that way,
eating builder bars every every morning.
yeah. But when I'm like on non-climbing days, that's when I have to get in the car and get going, But and then but if I'm not getting in the car and getting going on a climbing day, then I have fruit and yogurt and homemade granola that's got a lot of seeds and nuts in it. And then 11 o'clock, I'll have half a quart of water and a homemade bar that's granola and gorp and brown rice syrup. And then 1 o'clock or after my last workout, I'll have a protein shake. And then at 4 o'clock, I'll have the other half of my bar and the other half a quart of water. And then, then I have dinner. And it's like, the thing is that if you eat the same thing every day, I've gotten a lot of shit from my son. But anyway, it and others, it's so easy to go to the grocery store, right? Because just how much you need. You can go and what you need and how much you need, and you're in and out of there super fast, like you're super efficient. Same thing like when you go climbing like on a big wall, you know exactly what you need and how much you need. You're in there and you're out of there, and there's no question about, oh, well, what am I going to eat today? Like, you don't have to worry about it. It's just like if you're living in your Subaru and you only have 2 pairs of pants, it doesn't take you very long to figure out which pair you're going to wear, whichever pair you didn't wear yesterday, because you don't want to wear the same pair every day or whatever. I don't know. It's just like a pretty quick decision, right? Because that stuff, I don't know, whatever. You just get it done and you're efficient, and there you go. And so that's what I do in terms of nutrition, and it works. My body knows what to expect. And the thing about running is, like, I'm on this running program now. So I had to get both my hips resurfaced 20 years ago, because I think that you're born with most of us are probably born with an imperfect joint. Could be wrist, elbow, shoulders, neck, back. And I was born with slight hip dysplasia, which I didn't know till my surgeon told me, but I didn't know. Anyway, and I don't think I ever would have known had I not overdone it in terms of, when I was a teenager, I did a lot of downhill skiing, bump skiing, and then I started running, did a lot of running, did a lot of guiding, personal climbing, carrying heavy packs in the mountains. Got my hips resurfaced. They're all good now. But, I was never able to really run, especially on the flats, without feeling pain somewhere. I just always wanted to be able to run like I did in my 20s, just feel that flow, right? Feel just like you could go forever and without pain. And then I got this this simplest polar watch they make, and it's got a running program on it. So I'm like, oh, I'll check out the running program. It was in the winter, and I stepped on the treadmill. I'm like, I'll see if it hurts to run the treadmill. It didn't hurt. So then I enter this, like, you have to enter like what distance you want to run for your race in 3 months, and then you enter your age, and I can't remember what else. Anyway, so I did that. So then I'm running on the treadmill. That first week, it was like way too slow. I'm like, I can't do this. So I changed my age and made myself 5 years younger. Well, at the end of the month, I'd made myself 20 years younger. And this watch still to this day thinks, I think I might have even changed it back another time, so it thinks I'm 21 years younger than I am. But the point being is that it tells you the heart rate zone you should be in for your age, and length of time that you should be in these different heart rate zones on your different runs, right? I'm running 4 or 5 days a week, and I've been running without pain. And so the thinking about running has changed. So that mostly you're running. It's about running consistently without being injured, because if you run hard every day, like I used to run, then you get injured and then it sets you back. You're better off not getting injured in the first place. And then I had another person, as a massage therapist who worked on a big time runner, who said that, from Kenya, who said that, yeah, Americans mostly, when they run slow, they run too fast. And when they run fast, they run too slow. So you really should be paying, like when you run slow, you're really supposed to be running slow and recovering sort of, or whatever. And when you run fast, then you're supposed to really give her. And so anyway, that's been big for me, because I always want to feel like I can move and like I'm ready to go. Like somebody calls me tomorrow, like, hey, let's go to the Himalayas, got this peak, and looks good. And like, I'm ready to go. Like I'm fit. I'm ready to go, whatever, whenever, because I have the health. And so I've been taking it, I haven't been taking that for granted. I've been maintaining my fitness and trying to, and push my climbing.
Sounds like the interventions that have allowed you to be able to run. Specifically, you talked about getting your hips resurfaced. You talked about using some technology, this watch that you have
watch.
that you had to fiddle with, so that it would like actually.
And I go to the weight room because I think that's important too. But see, I don't know. I mean, I have books written by people who are better coaches, more scientific than I am about rock climbing, but I'm not sure that you get that you're able to work out all the muscles.
Sure. No, I agree. Yeah.
Without going to the gym. Besides that, I like the gym. It's good.
All of that makes a lot of sense. Awesome, Kitty. Maybe a few closing questions for us. What might be one lesson from the mountains that transfers best to everyday life for you?
I mean, if you're climbing in the mountains, and you have to be aware and thoughtful and also appreciative, because you don't know what's going to happen. So you want to be as best prepared as you can. And I think that, you go into it being grateful for whatever happens. At least you had the opportunity to be in this place at this time with whoever it is you're with, that gratefulness. Because when you're grateful, then you don't take things for granted. And then everything becomes more focused. You prioritize, and you're thoughtful, and things are more meaningful. So maybe if it came down to one thing, it's being grateful, I think.
Attitude of gratitude.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. It has, that's leads to success in so many different ways, right?
What is something you believed early in your career that you see differently now?
Early in my career that I see differently now. I think now I have a much greater appreciation for normal. What we were talking
normal
before, I mean, I'm taking advantage of my backyard and the awesomeness of what normal life is, that I guess I would have to say I didn't fully appreciate. I wanted something more. And now I'm pretty grateful for those things that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I like to call it earned appreciation.
I will have to agree with that, because I remember going on an ice climbing trip in the winter. It was in Canada with a friend. We were both at University of Washington getting our MBAs, and it was Britt Bishop. And we were going ice climbing in Canada. We were riding in my Subaru, and we didn't make it to the hostel that night. He said something about sleeping in the back of the Subaru with me. And I said, no, son. He was a couple years younger than me. No, son, you're going to Everest and you haven't even bivouacked in your life. You need to sleep out in the snowdrift there. And so I made him sleep out in the snowdrift, and it was brutally cold. It was way below zero. And I hear this knocking on the door, and it wasn't even light yet. And he's like, I'm cold, let me in. Let's go to the next rest stop so I can like warm up. Yeah. So I sort of think you have to earn it. Like, yeah, you definitely.
Man, you are a tough taskmaster. No, I feel maybe I feel in retrospect, this person will appreciate.
He made it
this
up Everest,
lesson.
I think. Yeah.
Oh.
So, and it was probably all
Okay.
because he got the experience bivouacking on the side of the road in Canada when I wouldn't let him in the car with me.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. What is one habit or belief or behavior that you have picked up in the last few years that's made the biggest impact in your life?
I'm just such a consistent person, and I've always been grateful that I happen to be disciplined. And discipline has made a huge difference in my life. I mean, I can't imagine what it would have been like being able to do the same things that I've done or be where I am now if I hadn't been so disciplined, both in terms of what I eat and drink and, the exercise schedule. And I guess probably that's made more of a difference as I've gotten older, now that I think about it, because, there have been times where I've been in the gym where I was like, God, how many days have I spent in the gym in my whole life? Right. And then it's like, here I am, here I go again. And I have friends, and my husband doesn't like working out indoors, even a indoor climbing gym. And it's like, I can do it. I can be driving across the country and stop at a hotel and go, to their little gym there and run on the treadmill. I mean, I don't have to be running outside. I can adapt. I can do that because I can adapt, and also because I have discipline that I think is, might take a little more when you get older, because you're like, well, yeah, right. Haven't I earned that time on the beach drinking Mai Tais yet? Aren't I there yet? When am I going to be there yet? Not there yet.
Well, for some reason, Kitty, I can't imagine you lasting more than one day at the beach doing that.
Drinking Mai Tais.
Kitty, do you think your best days are behind you or ahead of you?
They're different, I mean, I had good days in my 20s, I mean, like a lot of them. And there are times when, I mean, it'd definitely be good to feel like that or be doing that or be looking forward to that for sure. But, I never wanted to be sort of old and put all my eggs in one basket, even though I was so dedicated and focused, because I was just worried about missing out. I have this big FOMO thing. I don't like missing out. And, but then, there's sacrifices and balances and it's different for everybody. But for me, I want to keep pushing myself in whatever way that may be. And right now I still have the opportunities to push myself physically. That could end. I don't know. I mean, that could end, right? But then hopefully I'll keep pushing. There's other ways you can push yourself, and hopefully I'll be able to keep keep pushing. And it's in some ways, they talk about climbing being a selfish pursuit, but hopefully you learn from these experiences, and you can pass that wisdom on, share those lessons on, and grow and be a part of other people's growth, so that we all move forward together.
I love that, Katie. Yeah. Many truths
Yeah.
for all of us here. And then final question. If there was a billboard on the side of a highway close to you, and you could have it say whatever, what message would you leave?
I would be honored if it said, "She was a good and faithful servant."
The message needs to be for others to follow. Or maybe I'm not following that correctly.
Yeah, but people can, people, I mean, I think it's something to think about. What does that mean? What does that mean to me? What does it mean in my life? How could I, could I be that? How?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think that's perfect. I think, honestly, I think that answer, I think it goes back to what you were talking about, your leadership style, which is, I think it's not telling people what to do. It is being this example, or telling people, just not telling, but like just informing people what you stand for and what guides you, and allowing people to reflect and take away that lesson for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Ageless Athlete Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this show just as much as I enjoyed creating and producing it. Whether you are an athlete looking to push your limits or someone striving to maintain a healthy, active lifestyle as you age, there is always something new to learn. From Ageless Athlete, we bring you a fresh episode each and every week. If you liked what you heard, we would love it if you would take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an update. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a review, crush those 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. It helps us reach more people who are passionate about staying strong and resilient, no matter their age. Don't forget to visit our website and leave your email so I can send you occasional insights, stories, and tips to keep you inspired and motivated on your journey. You can also follow us on Instagram at Ageless Athlete Podcast and on YouTube at Ageless Athlete Podcast as well for even more great content. All of these links are available on the show notes for this episode. This show is entirely produced by me, Kush Khandelwal, based out of California with the help of my trusted adventure pup, Roger. Until next time, keep challenging yourself. Keep pushing those limits. Stay mentally and physically fit. Continue doing what you love to do. And my friends, stay ageless. Friends, this is not an ad. This is just a quick message to those amongst us who are listening to Ageless Athlete podcast for the first time. I would love it if you would hit subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcast or Spotify or Stitcher or Overcast or what have you, we bring you stories and routines and other inspiration from elites in the world of the best outdoor sports. In each episode, you will find how these athletes stay connected to the outdoors, maintain peak performance, and continue to thrive as they age. I encourage you to look through Brad episodes and listen to a couple and see if they resonate. And then, come back next week. We release an episode each week. And I am really inspired to bring you some of the best stories from the world of the outdoors. Okay, back to the show.